Welcome to M&P and welcome to another used bike test. This time we thought we'd try something a little bit different. How much does style matter to you on a bike? I mean, I used to pretend it didn't, I just wanted a fast bike, but over the years you realise that you do care what bikes look like, you do care what your kit looks like, and yeah, it needs to be functional, but there's always, I think, in anyone's choice of bike, a degree of style, a degree of what it looks like that's involved in making that choice. And something like this Husky Vitpilen 401 is all about style. I don't think that's a bad thing. When I rolled up to M&P Motorcycles this morning, I had a little bit of a agenda on mind. I wanted to ride something different. I didn't want to ride another parallel twin roadster. I didn't want to ride another four-cylinder sports bike. I wanted to ride something I've never ridden before and something that's a little bit left field. We had a good rummage around in what they've got there. The little 125cc Grom did grab my attention for a while, but then we stumbled across this Husqvarna Vitpilen. In fact, there was this one and there's a 125cc version as well. I've never ridden one, although I have ridden the KTM 390 engine, and I realised it stood out. In a showroom full of bikes, there was everything in there from Panigales to Tuono V4s to S1000W, a beautiful showroom of fantastic machines. This thing stands out. It is a really striking design and I think it looks awesome. So we grabbed the keys and headed into town to see what this Swedish striking styling design thing, urban bike that is the Vitpilen 401 was all about. We are on the Husqvarna Vitpilen, the 401. So Husqvarna do the Vitpilen and the Svartpilen. The Svartpilen's the scrambly doodah one with big wide bars and knobbly tyres. The Vitpilen's the kind of, I don't know, new age cafe racer, I guess you'd call it. It is an unashamedly stylish bike. Whether you like the style or not is a different question, but it is heavily styled. I think it looks really cool, and it's really striking. When you see one of these things, they stand out from a mile away. It is essentially a KTM 390 Duke in funny bodywork. Like that's it. You know, it's not like it's some super high spec thing or different geometry. It's just the same bike, different bodywork. If you're someone who likes the more pointy, aggressive, bug-styled bikes of the KTM, you're not even going to look at this. But if you're someone that wants something a bit more kind of urban, a bit cooler, a bit more styled, then the Vitpilen's the one to go for. They're $5.5 grand brand new now for a 2023 one, but it's a cool bike and it's A2 license compliant. It's super light, super easy to ride, and so we thought it was about time we took one out for a spin. So Husqvarna has its roots in Sweden. Obviously it's owned by the KTM Aero Mobility Group now, so it's technically Austrian, but it's a Swedish company originally, and they said they used a lot of Swedish influence in the design. I mean, come on, we're bigger than the IKEA jokes, aren't we? We're better than that. No one needs to mention flat pack furniture or meatballs. Just a nice looking bike. Come on, grow up. Best IKEA jokes in the comments below, please. But the 401, it is unashamedly the KTM 390. It's a Duke 390 with some fancy bodywork and different riding positions. It's not a revolutionary new bike, and Husqvarna made no secret about the fact that they were pinching KTM's technology and putting their own spin and their own style on it. I think that's a great thing. And from the point of view of owning one, particularly a used one, that engine, that 390 power plant, perfect as a used buy. They are, unless you're doing something really daft, they are pretty bomb proof. Keep it full of oil and petrol and it's gonna be fine. Now elsewhere on the bike, you know, the KTM group, Husqvarna, KTM, Gas, and the Augusta now as well. Within that group, they've got some really good components and really good companies to pull on. So even though this thing is $5.5 grand retail price, brand new that is, you get a lot of high quality kit on it. You get adjustable WP forks, you get a proper adjustable WP shock, you get, okay, not Brembos, but bi-bray, so the Chinese Brembo if you like, the pattern Brembo, but you get a good quality ABS system. So the bike you're buying, although it is a more budget bike, it's got high-end kit on it. Don't get me wrong, that WP Apex fork is the entry-level WP fork. It's not a full singing, full dancing, factory world superbike spec thing. It's a good road fork, but it's a decent quality bit of kit and it's adjustable. To get that stuff on a bike at this price point, yeah, that's good. There's that boring old TV chef waffle about the first bite of any meal is with your eyes. I mean, that's not how I eat, but I think it's got a bit of a parallel in motorcycles. That you don't you don't get on a bike without looking at it. You have to look at it to get on it. And for me, looking at this, it makes me want to ride it. It's got a kind of modern cutting edge version of a cafe racer feel to it, right down to the spoked wheels. You know, that was pointless. Why would you need spoked wheels on a road bike? Don't care, look awesome. The styling is absolutely stunning, I've already said it, but that little flashback headlight, the really nice round speedo, that tank seat unit floating one piece thing, name another bike that looks like that isn't a Vitpilen 125 or a Vitpilen 701. It is properly unique. When you get up close and start poking around, it frustrates me a bit because the tank and the seat and all that's so clean and so neat. The spoked wheels are lovely. And then you look inside the frame and there's just a big bundle of wires jammed in there. On the frame tube itself, there's stickers with barcodes, and I know you have to have that stuff, but right in the middle of my view when I look at the bike, that'd be easy to fix. And those little details, they would annoy me, but I guess they'd give me something to fix on the bike. These Vitpilen bikes, it's not unusual to see them up for sale with not many miles on, because it's a bike that is beautiful to look at. Compared to the Svartpilen, which is the more scrambly upright one, these ones are a little bit more aggressive in the riding position. You're lent on your wrists a bit more. So it's not a super practical bike for charging up and down the motorway or sitting on for 6 hours at a time. You know, it's more like a sports bike in that respect. So quite often these are around with not huge mileage, but in immaculate condition, which makes them a really good value used bike. This one, for instance, at M&P is up for, I think, just under 4 grand with 150, well, it had 153 miles when we picked it up. It's now got 200 miles on it. Sorry, whoever buys it, but basically a new bike for a massive chunk off what you'd have to pay if you wanted to go and buy a full retail brand new one now. Don't forget, if you are buying a second-hand bike, check to see if it has data tag on it already. If it does, rather than paying out for a full new data tag system, you can just go online, re-register your details so that updates the data tag system to you, and then you're covered, the bike's safe, you've got much more chance of getting the stuff back and of the thieves getting caught if the worst does happen. Instead of our normal charging around mountain roads and back lanes and jumping off bridges, we went for something different today. It's an urban styled bike. It's designed really as a city bike, a commuter bike that looks cool. So we thought we'd take it to the city, charge through traffic, whip around nice tight corners in town, and spend hours at traffic lights. It's all right, we didn't film that bit. It's an urban bike, so we took it to an urban environment to see how it performed. So as advertised, this is the city riding bit. Now for me, what makes a good city bike, lightweight is definitely high on the list, because you're always constantly maneuvering. You're kind of changing direction, you're accelerating, braking, stopping suddenly, accelerating, braking, stopping suddenly again. There's always, sometimes you have to paddle back to get out of the way of stuff. So there's always something going on. And one of the things that always makes me giggle with manufacturers, they talk about they've made an urban motorcycle, or this is a city bike. What does that actually mean? Like what do you do different on a city bike to a bike? I think it's code for, we want to sell these to people who commute. I think that's what the code is, or people who ride between coffee shops. Now the engine itself, it's never going to set the world on fire in terms of performance. It's a 44 horsepower, A2 compliant, single cylinder engine. It's got that slightly tinny, rattly feel that I'm going to go out on a limb and say pretty much every single A2 compliant 300 to 400 cc engine has. It just seems to be a feature of how those engines are getting built at the moment. I don't particularly enjoy that zingy, rattly, buzzy single cylinder feel. I like a big thumping, old school single cylinder bike. But when you ignore the noise and the sound, the way the engine pulls and performs is actually really good. This one's got a decent amount of mid-range, so when you need to just fire through a gap in the traffic or pass a car quickly before the traffic island appears, it's actually really, really punchy in that situation. It revs nicely too, so it's got a little bit of usefulness in the city, but then when you get on the open road, you can actually rev the living daylights out of it, and it feels like a good fun thrasher's engine, which is one of the things I loved the most about the 390 Adventure and the 390 Duke. Part of buying a used bike, one of the things always to consider is to check your insurance as well. You may remember our mate Bert the teacher, Bike World Bert. He's our default character for getting sample quotes from B-Moto. On this bike, Bike World Bert would have to pay just over 180 quid fully comprehensive insurance, or, lucky for Bert, he's already got a policy with B-Moto, fancy guy. It's 85 quid to add it to an existing multi-bike policy. So if you've got a bike and you just want to add this to the collection, 85 quid, but on its own, 180. Interestingly, Husqvarna do kind of make good provision for a pillion on these bikes. I can remember when I had my first bike, I always wanted to take my mates or my girlfriend's places, so having a space for a passenger was important. Nice long flat seat, good handrail. If your girlfriend is reasonably small when you're riding for 2 hours at a time, awesome. If you and your girlfriend or boyfriend or partner or just your mate, or in my case today, your cameraman, if you are larger human beings, it's good for an hour. And after an hour, you probably know each other better than you wanted to. I think that's fair to say. It coped with it, we did it all day. We were glad to get off the bike at the end of the day. I'll put it like that. So what is the Vitpilen for? I think there's kind of two types of people for this bike. Obviously, A2 license. If you've only got an A2 license, you're restricted, so your choice of motorcycle is limited, and this makes an ideal first bike in that situation. If you look at it and you love the styling, happy days, away you go. For those people who've already got a bike, maybe you've got a couple of bikes, this Vitpilen fits in that kind of jump on it and black down to the shops type of bike, if you know what I mean. I've got a couple of old classic, some are cafe racery things, some are scramblery things, just old junk that I've faffed around with for years, that if I just need to nip out to the shops or pop down to the pub of an evening, I'll jump on one of them. I don't want to sound a disservice, but that's exactly what this bike feels like to me. Great fun, easy to ride, looks cool, probably going to ride it for an hour at a time. That's where this bike fits. The difference between my old custom junk and this is cheaper to insure, far cheaper to run, and if one day I did want to ride all the way to the airport 4 hours away, this would do the job and actually get me there and back again afterwards, whereas the old stuff, not so much. But for me, the whole point of a Vitpilen isn't to buy a super comfortable bike. It's not to buy a practical bike. There's a million more practical, more usable day-to-day bikes out there on the market. But if we're going to go down that route, where do you stop? At what point do you end up in a Honda Jazz with air conditioning and heated seats for the winter? Like, motorbikes are inherently impractical most of the time. So I don't know, I want to move away from this trend of buying the most sensible bike that does all the jobs and just buy the thing that makes your heart sing. And I won't lie, when I walked into the showroom this morning, I looked at that and I went, bugger me, that looks awesome. I want a piece of that. And for me, that's good enough for any bike.